When Clara Park unlocked the door of the Sunflower Cafe before dawn one cold autumn morning, she did not expect that today would be the day everything changed. The mist clung to the edges of the streetlights, the chill in the air biting at her hands as she carried in crates of bread and cartons of milk. The bell above the door jingled faintly behind her, and the familiar scent of fresh coffee lingered in the wooden floorboards. She paused for a moment, leaning against the frame, watching her reflection blur in the glass. She had opened this little cafe 5 years ago, to be her own boss, yes, but also because she believed in community. In people. Even now, though times were harder than she'd ever anticipated, she trusted that kindness was not a luxury, but a necessity. Clara had been hearing footsteps outside, quiet ones, and today something different caught her ear. Soft murmurs, the shuffle of feet over concrete, perhaps someone searching for warmth in the darkness. She finished preparing the shop for the morning rush. The espresso machine gleamed, the pastries were warmed, the tables polished, and then she did something small, something easy. She carried 2 plates of breakfast, scrambled eggs, toast, a slice of melon, and placed them carefully on a sturdy side table just inside the front window. She set a thermos of hot tea next to them, and a small sign, "For anyone who needs a meal, no questions asked." She locked the door, walked back toward the front window, and in the dim light saw the silhouette of a man approaching. Tentatively, he entered, glanced at the food, then sat down at a table in the corner. Clara hesitated, then walked over with a cup of tea, gently placing it before him, and said, quietly, "Good morning." "That's very kind," he said, voice rough, but with surprise. "Thank you." For that moment she saw more than a stranger. She saw a person, someone who before dawn crawled out of a worn blanket, whose stomach growled so that teeth rattled, whose eyes were tired of sleeping on hard pavement. She understood without asking what hunger could do to a person, how it dims hope, how it lowers the heart. And she made a choice, to do more than let her heart ache. To act. Word of that small, unassuming gesture spread first through whispers. The homeless man, Marcus, came back the next day. Then another. Others watched from sidewalks, noticed the sign, saw Clara's eyes lift in welcome rather than judgment. Soon, the Sunflower Cafe at 6 in the morning had meals waiting outside its doors, not just a plate or two, but enough for several people, served quietly, with dignity. Clara's staff, some of whom had been doubtful at first, stood behind the service, mapping times, organizing trays, collecting donations. What surprised Clara was not the need, she'd always known the need was there, but how many others resonated with her gesture. A retired schoolteacher named Ms. Rodriguez began bringing sandwiches. A young graduate student, wrapping up a night shift at the hospital, left bottles of water. A neighbor, John, dropped off blankets in the cold weeks. Soon the cafe sign might have read, "Someone cares." One rainy morning, Clara stepped out under an umbrella, carrying a tray. Water dripped from her coat. Fingers of wind tugged at her hair. She placed steaming bowls of oatmeal on the bench outside, along with spoons, napkins. As she turned to go inside, she looked across the street. An elderly man, his coat torn in places, backed by the shelter's wall, eyes on the ground. She crossed to him. "Here," she said, lifting a bowl. He looked up, startled. He touched the bowl, then his hand went to his heart. He whispered, "Bless you." That phrase, simple and ancient, echoed in Clara's mind as though it were something she had been longing to hear. He stood, cradled the bowl, turned away. For a moment, Clara watched him walk, slowly, down the street, bowl held gently, hope renewed in his steps. And she realized, sometimes one small kindness is more than food. It is remembrance, it is dignity, it is a signal that you are not invisible. And then came the turning point. One afternoon, a travel writer from a national magazine sat across from Clara in the cafe, drawn by the muffled buzz of conversation and aroma of coffee. The writer, Jenna Lim, had arrived in town to capture stories of grassroots change. She asked Clara why she began leaving free meals. Clara spoke of nights she caught sight of people shivering on curbs, of days she saw children tugging their mothers' coats, of how she could not sleep knowing someone somewhere just outside her cafe was starving. Jenna's piece hit the internet like a stone in calm water. The next morning, Clara was overwhelmed, messages from strangers around the country. Social media posts, photos of plates outside cafes in Chicago, Seattle, Boston. Inspired by the sunflower, they said. Someone in rural Vermont set up a share tray. At dawn, a diner in Dallas posted a sign, for all who need us, and left meals on picnic benches. A bakery in Portland baked loaves for the street. In Atlanta, churches and cafes teamed up, sharing food rosters. A wave of generosity stretched across states, across time zones, across continents. Strangers became organizers. Neighbors saw neighbors. Communities felt closer. But with growth came challenges. Donations were insufficient at times. Storms destroyed the trays. At times, local authorities questioned health regulations. There were nights Clara sat reviewing numbers, worried about legal implications, about sustainability. She wondered if maybe this effort, this ripple, was too fragile. She had a major setback one cold winter's evening. A propane heater caught alight in the back kitchen, a small blaze that left part of her storage damaged. Heat lost. Some of the donated food perished. For a moment the cafe shook with more than smoke. Clara shook with doubts. Was this madness? Was kindness enough? But that night, when she thought all was lost, people came. The regulars, those who usually ordered a latte and blueberry scone, showed up with contributions, canned goods, thermoses, even a neighbor's truck loaded with supplies. One young man who'd eaten free meals when he was down and out stood before Clara in the cafe's dim back room. He had a job now. He held out an envelope. Inside were $50. I got this from my first paycheck, he said. Use it to feed others. Clara felt tears she had held back all year spill. The crisis passed. The heater was repaired by love. The trays were rebuilt. The food once again went outside at dawn. The trays weren't pristine, but they held warmth. Across the map, small storms of kindness ignited new praxis. In neighborhoods, cafe owners began working with shelters to map out who needed what. Grocery stores donated unsold produce. School cafeterias kept extra portions for students who might walk home to empty kitchens. People who had no link to the sunflower called Clara, asked for her guidance. She shared what she had learned, the importance of safety, of respect, of sustaining generosity without burning out. Then an international organization reached out, a nonprofit focused on hunger and homelessness. They offered grants, resources, helped coordinate volunteers. Clara hesitated. She remembered the original simplicity of her act. No paperwork, no fanfare, just a seed planted in the gloom. But she realized that to nourish this movement, structure would help. With careful planning, the network grew, yet the heart remained the same: free meals, unconditional. Hospitality, dignity. Now, more than a year later, Clara stood in the Sunflower Cafe at dawn again. She watched 5 steaming trays lined along the exterior wall. She watched people arrive, some hurrying, some cautious, some sure. She watched children, their ribs hidden under coats, their cheeks pink with cold, pick up bowls of food and walk toward the bench. She watched volunteers, students, artists, homeless themselves, carry blankets, share laughter, exchange smiles. She saw tears in people's eyes. She heard the sound of gratitude. She smelled the tang of coffee, the sweetness of fresh bread, the warmth of community. Then she saw a postcard pinned on the community board behind the counter. It was from someone in New Zealand, a cafe in Auckland. The owner had read Jenna's article, had been moved to set up the same free meals in her town. Your kindness is our inspiration, the message read. Clara's hands trembled as she held it up. Across the globe, lives were being touched, not by politics, not by planned charity drives, but by a single act of generosity. In that golden light before sunrise, Clara thought of every person who had sat down at those plates: the young man sleeping rough, the ex-nurse with trembling hands, the mother with 2 small children. She thought of every volunteer who had brought soup, of every stranger who had seen someone in pain and stopped being afraid of getting involved. She realized that kindness is never one way. It flows back, it builds. The emotional crescendo came not in fame, but in connection. Marcus, the man who came first, had begun volunteering. One morning he wiped tables. Another morning he offered handshake and greeting to someone new. He told Clara, quietly, "You saved more than my morning hunger. You saved my belief that people see me." And in that saving, that interchange, Clara saw the movement's deepest truth: we are saved when we see each other. The finale. Somewhere in America, in Seattle, in Houston, in small towns in Nebraska, the movement continues. Cafes stand ready with trays and smiles. Neighbors keep watch for someone who needs help. People who thought kindness was something they had to wait for realize they can give it now. Because for Clara, kindness was never just a meal. It was a declaration: you are not alone. And so, The story of the Sunflower Cafe ends, or rather, begins, reminding everyone who hears it that one person's free meals outside a cafe door can ripple outward, across rooftops and oceans, through hearts and across borders. In the quiet hours before daybreak, generosity can spark hope. In the dark, we are not invisible. Wherever you are, hungry, cold, weary, there is someone who cares. And for those with something to give, however small, a single act of compassion may be all it takes to change a life, and maybe the world.